Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second round of the Esport Designs Porsche Cayman Cup Invitational here at the Nurburgring, a few kilometres north of Frankfurt, the 5.148 kilometre circuit nestled in the Eifel Mountains, sits in the shadow of the Green Hell, the Nordschleife, the 20.81 kilometre circuit that so many drivers fear and love in equal measure. But tonight we go racing with Cayman GT4s around the GP Strecker, and I'm joined in the commentary box by David Ressel. David, we're looking forward to this one, but for those who are maybe new to this championship, what is the format of this evening's action?
Good evening, Tim. Hope you're well, mate. Looking forward to this one. If it's anything by round one's estimations, I'm sure we're going to be in for an absolute cracker of an evening's worth of racing. Format for this evening, we've got a 15-minute qualifying coming up. The participants at the moment, they're just finishing their free practice sessions. There's about 7 or 8 minutes left of that. We'll then shift into that 15-minute qualifying session, and it's a flag to flag, 60-minute in inverted commas sprint race. And we're looking at a plus 30 cars on the grid for this evening's one, Tim. I think it's going to be an absolute belter.
Well, as you alluded to there, David, a sensational race last time out at Imola to kickstart this inaugural season of the Esport Design Porsche Cayman Cup. It was Luca Burke, as you can see on the right-hand side of the table there, who led from pole to flag to take victory rather convincingly, but it wasn't without drama behind as Noel Brinkman and Rumle Jensen, the two Pulse Simsport drivers, rounded out the podium. Alex Buncombe in fourth place, certainly enjoyed his battles with Yannick Muller from the Simsport Solutions team. He finished further down the order. Stephen Haley there in fifth. He had a nice race through the order, coming from ninth, but unfortunately he will not be racing tonight after a broken rig, and I think we can all sympathise with Mr. Stephen Haley of a broken steering wheel. But Bastian Zenefels, after looking so strong in the early stage of the race, succumbed to some drama late on with Ross McGregor, Regan Mitchell, Dean Allen and Cody Pride, your point scorers from the race last week. But David, we say that the race was packed with action, and we can keep saying that, but I don't really think we can put that across enough to the guys and girls listening at home this evening. Action up and down the field, and we heard from a number of drivers after the race that they really enjoyed getting stuck in, even if they weren't fighting for the points.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. You're right, and as you mentioned, the points obviously an F1 style points paying position, so it's first until 10th. So with 30 plus drivers in the grid, it's going to be interesting to see the battles that we do see. Of course, like you say, we saw battles literally from the sharp end to the slightly more blunt end down to the back of the grid as well. And I'm hoping we're going to see plenty more of that again this evening. Of course, as we've mentioned a couple of times, a very stacked grid full of sim racing and real racing talent. Of course, you mentioned Al Buncombe. We've got Oscar Sandberg in there, and I believe this evening I noticed he dropped into the Invitational server a little bit earlier on today. I do believe we're going to have Jenson Button in the on the grid this evening, and should be getting him in for the rest of the season. So it's
that we're all going to be looking at this evening is Luca Burke. He was seemingly untouchable last time out at Imola, leading from pole to checkered flag. But we've heard, David, from a couple of the drivers that things are going to be tight in qualifying. I spoke to Will Dendy, who said he was practicing with Luca Burke and they were separated by a couple of hundredths. But that's the style of racing that single make championships really lean towards. You've really got to find those extra tenths. But in the case of last week's qualifying, where the pole position, I think it was Luca Burke, was separated from Zenefels by less than 2/10, it's really about finding those little margins and finding that little bit extra over your competitors.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim, and it's one for setups as well. I mean, the Nurburgring is probably one of those key places where I imagine a lot of these guys probably were honing initial setups even before the series had started, because you've got quite a good mix of corners in the track around here. Of course, you've got the sweeping corners down through the Schumacher S's. You've got the hairpin. You've got a couple of hairpins. The tighter first section into the Mercedes arena. So it really kind of gives to needing a really nicely balanced setup and having confidence in the car. And that's the beauty you get from a spec series such as this. And I think what what Steve from Esport Designs has come out with in terms of a design for this, no pun intended, is nothing short of brilliant. And then, like I say, we've got 5 rounds. We've had one. We've got round number 2 coming up this evening. If we're going to have anything like we have had last week, it's going to be a brilliant one tonight, and we're going to have another 3 rounds of amazing quality races as well.
Well, your sentiments are definitely being echoed in the YouTube chat. Hello to everyone who is tuning in from wherever you are around the world. We have EGT Challenge TV, obviously the team that David Belanger, Gabriel Lafreniere and Alan Leon race for. So 3 cars this evening to cheer on for those guys. Michael Haffenden tuning in, Porsche Sport. Nice to see you saying they're very excited for this one. And we keep saying, David, that we're getting excited for this one, but we can't explain it. It is so close between these guys, and the best thing is it's a balance of people taking part. We do have these real world drivers, but we've also got this intense sim driver grid. We have the likes of the Zancho Sim Sport guys, like we say, Luca Burke, Matt Webb. We've also got the new Mob 7 Zancho team with Will Dendy and Chris Shaw. Then to factor in the Pulse Sim Sport guys that we saw out there last time getting 2nd and 3rd on the podium. Really, it's a level playing field. It doesn't matter if you've got that experience in the real world or whether you're quick on your sim. These drivers are going at it on a very level playing field.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And if we do refer back once more to last week, it was a very, very, very balanced field. I said very a few too many times there. I was just trying to figure out the next word, but there was so much quality throughout the field. And I think in qualifying, at least, there was no more than a sort of 2.5, 3 seconds between pole sitter Luca Burke and any of the guys down towards the back end of the grid, which means if you can get yourself halfway up the field, you're in for a fantastic race. And obviously with it being that Formula One style points paying positions where you obviously only got the points from 1st to 10th, it does mean that there's going to be battles towards the lower end and the middle end of the grid because people are going to want to get some points on the board. Of course, we've got 5 rounds here, this being race number 2. And there's no sign as to who's going to be running away with the championship just yet. But we might get a bit of a better idea at the end of the race tonight. But people are going to want to try and get some points on the board, including some of those who, like you mentioned, Tim, dropped out of the points. Someone like Yannick Muller, for example, came out of the points due to a drive-through, if I remember correctly, because of track limits. So he's going to be probably sticking a little bit further away from the curbs this evening if he wants to avoid that again.
Yeah, we did see a number of drivers really lose out on points positions through those drive-throughs, but this Nurburgring GP circuit, there's only really a couple of opportunities to extend track limits or indeed have one of those warnings from the drivers. From the stewards, sorry. And as you alluded to, David, this is only the 2nd race of the season. 3 more to go. We go down to South Africa on the 8th of March for the round at Kyalami. Then a week later, the 15th of March, we're back at Snetterton in the UK. And then we go to Donington on the 22nd of March for the finale. But really, this thing is going to go right down to the wire. But like you say, David, this evening's race could prove pivotal in the championship fight. You don't want to find yourself down the order, missing out on a points opportunity because you're running out of rounds to catch back up. And someone like Turn 1 Esports, Oscar Zandberg, who unfortunately disconnected from the race last week, you're running out of opportunities to catch up those points as we hear the drivers are out on track and qualifying is getting underway. And just to make our jobs harder this evening, DW, it's dark out there at the Nurburgring.
Absolutely, yeah. 6 in the morning. Race start, from what I understand, is going to be 7 a.m. So it's not even going to be a huge amount lighter than it is at the moment. You might see the sun peeking over the brow of the hill into some of the areas of the track. But yeah, it's going to make things a little bit more difficult. You can see they're not hanging around getting out on track as we're following Luca Burke at the moment. He's got I think that's one of the one of the Turn 1 guys in front of him, number 22 car. Oh no, it's one of the EGT guys. Sorry, David Bellinger in front of him. He's managed to circumnavigate him. But yeah, I'm sure Luca will be hoping for a similar race as to what he had last week. It's going to be slightly more difficult, I think. The Nurburgring, plenty of opportunities to overtake. And it's going to be interesting to see whether he can start to break that gap. Because if you remember, Tim, towards the end of last week, Noel Brinkman was actually starting to close Luca down. So it wasn't, although it looked fairly comfortable from the outside, I think if we had a couple more laps in the race, it could have been right down to the wire.
Definitely, and also we have to remember that Luca's advantage he held through the middle of that race was really through drama kicking off behind him, giving that breathing space. It's really how close the order is as we see the drivers on their warm-up laps. Jenson Button for the Team Rocket Esports, he's making his first appearance in the Esport Design Porsche Cayman Cup. And he's one of these drivers we're really going to be looking at. He's somewhat, it's funny to say this, he's somewhat of an unknown amongst this grid, which is very peculiar to say for Jenson Button, all the success he's had in the racing world. But he's yet to come up against some of these drivers. Obviously, we know his involvement with Zancho, etc. So he has raced with a few of these names, like Luca Burke. They took part in the Next Gen Brain Tumor Charity Silverstone 12 Hours at the weekend. But really, Jenson's got a new challenge to adapt to this evening, which is a grid packed full of drivers he might not recognise.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And there's going to be a lot of those. Like you say, yes, you're right, he knows a lot of these people, but there's going to be people he's not raced against before, whether that is in just generally this area, or it could be something entirely different. As you see, Truls Solberg's actually popped into the chat. Unfortunately, he can't attend tonight because he's got real life work to do, which is not something you want to have to be dealing with. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't need to know about his credentials in the real racing world. I think we all know the standout features of that, and of course, he's massively into the sim racing scene now. As you said, Tim, the 12 Hours of Silverstone just a couple of days ago. But different kettle of fish. This spec series, not something I've personally seen him in before. So it's going to be interesting to see how he manages to map his real world skills across into the racing scene.
He has experience in the Porsche Cayman, which he ran in the Sim Sport Racing Season 4 of GT4. But here on your screens at the moment, Luca Burke in the number 87 Zancho Sim Sport Cayman. He was our race winner last time out, looking pretty solid down at the bottom of the hill through, well, we say it's a hairpin, it's not really, but flying up through the Michael Schumacher S's, using all of the available track as he passes under the camera, using the curb on both sides up towards this tricky sequence of turns at the top of the hill, the left, right into the Warsteiner curve before really the back straight through the Ad Van Bogen kink up towards the final chicane. And a different layout, obviously. This is the layout of the circuit you might be familiar with from Intercontinental GT and WEC, where they use the slightly faster final chicane, so it's not that much of a heavy stop. But of course, we do have that heavy stop into turn one, which will definitely be an action point this evening, as we see Burke using all the curb on the entry into the final corner at turn 15, understeering slightly through the middle of the curve, but able to get it straightened back up before he crosses the line to set what I believe will be his first flying lap. And he goes top with a 2:04.3. I spoke to Will Dendy yesterday, and he said that the guys are aiming at a 2:03, so a little bit of time left to be found.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. You see Steve Hinden from the esports design team, number 80 car, is going to come across the line. Looks like Luca Burke is still sitting pretty at the top of the tree. Steve goes just within a second of that time, and I'm sure that we'll start to see those times tumble down. It is a fast track at the moment. It's a little bit cold, obviously, due to the time. You see John Clements going very wide through there, overcompensating through the first of the Vido S's, or chicane, if we're going to call it, and then having to overcompensate to straighten the car back up. So that's going to ruin his lap if he was on a fast lap. We're starting to see more and more times come through, and it's going to be interesting to see how close this group is. I think it's on Jenson Button there, appropriately putting himself to the top of the timing charts. But it's a long track, Tim. Obviously, two and a bit minutes race time, so it does mean that there's plenty of chance to make and lose time. But I think a 2:03 to that sort of area is going to be something that they'll strive to, and I think we'll see a lot of people very close together at the sharp end of this grid.
Which is exactly what we want on a Wednesday evening, jam-packed with sim racing. We want to see these guys all close together, and indeed, you look at the timing tower on the left-hand side, a matter of tenths really separating drivers even outside of the top 10. So fantastic first times coming in, and we've just dipped below 10 minutes remaining on this session. Yannick Muller on your screens at the moment, coming through the left-right, the Michelin curve and the Warsteiner curve in the number 43 Sim Sport Solutions car. Yannick was getting involved in some rather exciting battling with Alex Buncombe last time out. A couple of blows exchanged between the pair of them. He'll be hoping for a slightly cleaner race this time, like we said. A drive-through, dropping himself outside of the top 10. So missing out on points through the chicane for this particular lap. Looking nice and in control, using all of the curb on the way in. The Porsche Cayman 718 backfiring as he brakes into the Coca-Cola curve. And on the exit, using plenty of the track, but not running four wheels off. Obviously, he doesn't want to invalidate the lap time, and he goes third. So 2.5 tenths off the provisional pole position, as we hear Jenson Button is a few tenths up, 4 tenths up on his time at the moment. So he needs to keep it clean through the final few corners. And we could see him jump up to pole position, as it looks like Luca Burke has improved his time down to 2:03.9. Button rounds the final corner and onto the pit straight and crosses the line. Does he improve? And yes, he does. And look at that, David, already a gap of 0.07 of a second between Button and Burke at the top of the pile.
Yeah, they're very familiar, as you said, Tim, so it's going to be interesting to see whether they're having any words between each other at the moment. But what a lap from Luca Burke so far. Just under 8 minutes remaining. Buncombe now 10th up as well, so he's going to put himself in the mix as well if he can get a couple of, maybe a 10th or so more as he goes through the last couple of corners. In fact, he's not even towards that yet. He's going through the Cumio and the bit curve. I imagine, Tim, at some point this evening, we're going to have different names for everything because it sounds like we've got different track maps and different sponsorship deals on our runs at the moment. He's coming down through the kink. He's still a 10th up, I understand, so he's not yet managed to gain too much extra time. But we know, Tim, if you can be aggressive enough through this last couple of corners, you can definitely gain yourself that 10th.
Plenty of time to be gained, but equally plenty of time to be lost. And Buncombe all over the curb on the right-hand side, and he's going to have lost that time, and we're hearing he has. So lap time gone then for Buncombe. I'm sure he'll finish this one anyway. He gained a couple of tenths back, 2 tenths now up on his time. He's managed to pull that one out of the bag, and there he goes. He improves. Doesn't improve his position, but does improve his time to go 4,000 shy of a 10th off of pole position as Will Dendy here in the 28 Mob 7 Zansho Esports is a couple of tenths up on his time at the moment, kicking up the sparks on the curbs, and he's actually pulling over and is going to abort that lap. So Dendy not happy with the that lap so far. Regan Mitchell here, the SimSport racing car, number 69, 4 tenths up on his time, coming up through the Michael Schumacher S, using all of the curb and then some on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. Got a bit of traffic in front of him, but I think there's a couple of cars also on hot lap, so he shouldn't get held up. Unfortunately, I think he's a little bit too far back to maybe benefit from the tow. 6 minutes and 20 seconds remaining. Dust kicked up in front of him from one of those cars, and he's still got 5 tenths in pocket at the moment. And if he does improve by that, we might see him move up a couple of positions. We see Ross McGregor actually just went faster. So if Mitchell can improve by 5 tenths, he'll go up towards 8th as he slings it over the curbs. That could have been time lost. 4 tenths he has now. 3 tenths. It's going down as he runs to the line. Let's see where Mitchell goes. If he improves, he can get himself inside the top 10. Crosses the line and he goes 9th, knocking Steve Hinden from that position. But as we're seeing already, David, it's these guys are really hanging it out in these qualifying laps with 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, no holds barred. Cody Pride currently 6 tenths up as we ride alongside him as well. I did notice that Jenson Button currently on provisional pole. He's managed to get into the 203s himself. 10th or so faster than Luca Burke at the moment, so he's setting the stall out to see if he can get that pole position. But Cody Price still 6 tenths up, so that will put him around the bottom end of the top 10. So hopefully he can carry on that. He's 9 tenths up now. We're hearing, so he's going to go right up towards 4th place if he keeps that run going. Nice run through the Coca-Cola curve, comes across the line. Must have lost a little bit of time there, but he's come through 6 tenths off provisional pole sitter Button at the moment. And I mean, look at that, Tim. The first 12 runners are just shy of a second between them.
Exactly what we like to see here, and we see the number 22 of David Belanger in the EGT Challenge car, 20th last time out on the grid, and he's up in 7th at the moment. So that's a fantastic run from him so far as we dip below 5 minutes to go. James Warren here, the pole position racing car, up by 4 tenths as it stands. We could see him improve up a couple of positions, 15th as it stands at the moment, coming through this back straight on the run up towards the Vidal chicane. See if he can keep it tidy and keep that time in hand as he brakes late, flicks the car, mild understeer through the left, and that leaves him all over the curb on the right hand side. I wouldn't be surprised to see that lap invalidated, and yes, he cuts across into pit lane. And James Warren deciding to head back to his pit stall and maybe head out again. Oscar Zandberg, really unfortunate last time out, David, we've touched on it. He disconnected from the race whilst running inside the top 5. He's had plenty of experience here at the Nurburgring. He's a winner in class at the Nurburgring 24 hours last year, but someone might need to remind him not to turn left at the end of the lap and turn right back onto the start-finish straight. But we'll see how Oscar gets on as we cut to Steve Hinden, championship manager, I suppose. 2 tenths up on his time at the moment. Might see him improve into the top 10. And those top 10 positions are the points-paying ones. And I suppose, David, it makes your job easier if you start inside those positions.
Well, absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit earlier, Tim. It's going to be interesting to see how the guys get on into turn 1. It's a tight corner. There's definitely enough to fit 3 or 4 cars wide, especially in these Caymans, a little bit narrower than some of the other cars you'll see running around this track in these simulations. But yeah, interesting to see. As you see, Stephen in there going 8th position with about 5/10 off at the moment. You see, I think we saw him flashing James Merrills, who was a little bit further away. You see a lot of flashing of the lights at the moment, made all the more clearer by the fact that we're in the dark at the moment. Will Dendy at the moment still flashing those lights. Apologies to those who don't want to see those flashing lights right about now, because that was a bit in your face. But he's 3/10 up. Clearly wants it known that the driver in front of him needs to get miles out of his way, because he's obviously knowing he's on a very decent lap at the moment. So it's going to be we'll have to see what he does when he comes over the line. Still flashing away. I can't quite catch who it is in front of him, but he's certainly going to get the draft down the straight, Tim. So it'll be interesting to see if that's giving him a bit more time as well as he comes through the last couple of corners.
Needs to keep it tidy. Dust kicked up in front of him. That will put him off as he runs through the Vidal chicane, using all the curb through there and on the run into the final corner at Coca-Cola. He's only got a 10th up on his time at the moment, so that could see him improve. Can he knock Hindon out of 8th place as Dendy runs to the line, still flashing the lights? It goes up to 6th. That's a really impressive lap from Will Dendy there. Brinkman, podium finisher last time out, 4/10 up on his time, so that might see him jump into the top 10 as it stands at the moment with 2 minutes to go. So drivers are going to have maybe 1 or 2 more laps depending on where they are on track at the moment. And by the looks of things, everyone is out on circuit, so it's all about finding that prime real estate for you to set your best lap time. Brinkman rounds the final corner at the Coca-Cola curve to cross the line. Does he improve? Yes, he goes up to 7th. So everyone seems to be finding time in this final sector. Whether or not track conditions are changing, rubbering in, it probably will be over this 15-minute session. Luca Burke 2/10 up. This could be enough for him to knock Jenson Button off pole position and reclaim that top spot as he crosses the line, and does so with 2:03.645 from round 1 race winner as Yannick Muller 3/10 up. And he's got traffic in front. That's Matt Atkins who pulls aside, but I'm pretty sure that might have cost Muller some time. 2/10 as he crosses the line, and he gets himself up into 3rd place, knocking Al Buncombe off that position. So some quick times coming in right at the death here.
Yeah, absolutely. 10 minute left of the session. John Munro now, we can see he's 5th place at the moment. He's 2/10 up, so that could potentially put him in with a chance of 4th ahead of Al Buncombe. In potentially, if he can gain a little bit more, he'll go ahead of Yannick Muller as well. I mean, the quality of these drivers in this qualifying session, Tim, has been nothing short of incredible. I mean, we've got guys throwing it all over the place in the picture in picture now. Luca Burke currently 2/10 up, so he's improving on his pole position times. He's going through the Dunlop hairpin at the moment, at the bottom end of the track, I believe that was. But it's interesting to see how he is. I mean, like you say, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Track's rubbering in. Times are getting faster.
Times are getting faster, yeah, and it might be that the last man to cross the line grabs pole position, as we see Steve Hindon has head to pit lane as well as Dean Allen. So they've had enough with 15 seconds to go, and actually a few drivers now opting to resort back to their pit stalls, and they've given it everything. But we see Munro on your screen at the moment in the standings the timer is about to hit 0, so this will be his final lap up through turns 10 and 11, descending downhill before going through the kink and on the run up to the chicane. He's looking pretty comfortable at the moment. So we hear Luca Burke, who's actually running behind Munro at the moment, is 3/10 up, so he's really gonna just to rub salt in the wounds after beating Button to pole. Apparently he's lost the time, so Burke backing out of what could have been his quickest lap. So we'll have to see whether Button's got anything left. A final knockout blow to the round 1 race winner. As we see Munro cross the line, I don't think he managed to improve, but those drivers then coming across the start-finish line. We'll see the order, see if that changes, but it looks like it's going to be Luca Burke, who's now in pit lane, will take pole position for round 2, but here's Button's last chance to close up, and he does. Look at that for a gap. Best part as Yannick Muller jumps in and knocks Button off the front row. So a fantastic time from Muller, less than 200ths down, as we hear Buncombe is 2/10 up on his fastest, so he's going to have the last say on who's on the front row. Let's see if Buncombe can finish his lap in the cleanest of manners, and does so. So let's see as he runs to the line. Can he improve on his time? From 5th place, he goes 4th, exchanging positions with John Munro, bagging himself that position on the 2nd row. But wow, David, a margin of less than, I don't even know what, less than 200ths of a second at the end of that one. And like you say, around a long lap here, this just shows you how tight the margins are between this grid.
Oh, unbelievable that was, Tim. What an ending to the qualifying session that was. I think we've got a stellar race in prospect for us, if that's anything to go by. I think you're right. That the top five there, separated by no more than just over a quarter of a second, which is absolutely incredible. And it just seemed like the guys were eking out every possible inch of time in those last couple of corners. And it just shows you, I think you mentioned, Tim, obviously with the track limits, they're much more rewarding in terms of what you can get away with as opposed to Imola last week. So it gives the guys a chance to really push the limits a little bit more than they normally would. They can run out onto the curves a little bit longer. They're not necessarily aggressive curves like you've seen at some of the other tracks we've been at or will be at over the next couple of weeks. And it looks like the guys are making the most out of that. And I mean, wow, what a competitive qualifying session. What more can you say?
Yeah, what more can you want from the second round qualifying for the Esport Designs Porsche Cayman Cup? Luca Burke grabbing the headlines, it seems, so far in this championship and grabbing a consecutive pole position, beating Yannick Muller to the top spot by less than 200ths of a second. Then it's Button and Bunkum, the two Rocket Esports drivers, sharing the second row. John Munro in the number 25 will line up alongside Will Dendy. It's Cody Pride, Noel Brinkman, one of the podium finishers from the first race at Imola, will line up in 8th place alongside Zenefels and Belanger there in 10th. He's really improved on his qualifying from last time out, 20th to 10th. So excited to see what the EGT Challenge driver can indeed do. But David, we say it's a flag to flag sprint. It's 60 minutes. It's sometimes worth losing a battle to win the war in these races.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, turn one's going to be an interesting prospect. I don't think we'll see too much in terms of any too much door banging, as it were. I'm sure we'll see a little bit of contact here and there, but nothing too much. Rubbing is racing, of course, as we say. Going back to what you said about David Bellinger there, if he goes up and if he does anything like he did this week and he continues improving, we should expect to see him on pole next week. If he's going to go up another couple of positions like he has done this time, and he certainly managed to tame that Porsche Cayman around the curves of the Nurburgring. And yeah, like you say, hour-long race. So it's not going to be one into turn one. None of these races will be. It is technically classed as a sprint, of course, with it being flag to flag. But I'm sure we'll see a lot of people just biding their time, not making moves too early. There's plenty of overtaking spots, as you will know, around this track. And it'll be interesting to see how these guys use the racecraft in this spec series to make their way back at the field.
Factor in as well that drivers won't need to make a pit stop at any point during the 60 minutes for tyres or fuel. So they're going to have to, deal with the cards they've been dealt towards the final quarter of the race. We did hear about a few drivers in the interviews last time who struggled with tyre pressure loss over curbs, or indeed struggled with running out of fuel. Actually, Charlie Martin, one of the Turn 1 Esports drivers, she was rather unfortunate in running out of fuel towards the end and dropped down the order as we see the drivers pull away from the grid. Fortunately for us, David, it looks like the sun is starting to rise here at the Nurburgring, so we're going to have an easier job picking out the cars, but that will bring in a slightly changed track conditions. I wouldn't be surprised to see the track heat up and indeed see the rubber get laid down. So we could see a very fast end to this race and a very fast start for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, rolling starts. It's not going to be a case of who's going to get the best start off the line into turn number one. It should be fairly equal. All limited to just a smidgen over 43 miles an hour in the lights go green. Unless if they go over that, they'll get a drive-through penalty at the start.
It's a technical term, isn't it, David? A smidgen as well.
That is in
the rule book.
Oh, absolutely. I did read the briefing, and I'm 99% sure I saw smidgen through one form of spelling.
A southern rulebook, according to our broadcast director Steve Proudly from Sim Sport Solutions. But yeah, it's all about getting the jump off the start, like you say, David. Rolling start really does change things. You're going to be eyeing up the competition around you. And speaking of competition around you, Jenson Button finding himself at the sharp end in third place on the second row. Picture in picture on the right hand side of your screen, you can see James Merrills in the MSL Motorsport car, that pink pig livery. He's already flashing the light, so he's keen to get a move on, isn't he? He's got to wait. He's got the majority of a lap to go before we get the green flag, but he's eager, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the grid will be eager to get this one going.
Absolutely, Tim, and hopefully he's not going to be flashing them too much going down the hill in towards turn one. Otherwise, we could see a bit of a pile up, shall we say? But hopefully, we won't have any of that. Obviously, we saw last week that they had absolutely no issues getting through Tamburello at Imola on the first lap. So hopefully, we'll see some of the same. Of course, bit of a bigger braking zone, which does leave it liable to some potential love taps, shall we say, from people who've slightly outbrake themselves under slightly colder brakes and tyres than normal. But hopefully we see none of that, and hopefully we get an hour's worth of brilliant battle in racing, which I'm sure we will.
So my eyes will be locked on Oscar Sandberg in the number 120 Turn 1 eSports car. We saw how quick he was last time out, and down in 16th, I wouldn't be surprised to see him travelling towards the front of the grid. But as the drivers nearing the end of this warm-up lap, it does seem to take a while here at the Nurburgring. It's a 2-minute lap, over a 2-minute lap, when they're driving flat out, as we saw in qualifying. But on this particular warm-up lap, it seems to take an age. But as the grid begins to form up, it's Luca Burke who will lead them across the line, with Yannick Muller alongside him in the SimSport Solutions number 43. Then it's an all-Rocket Esports second row with Jenson Button and Alex Buncombe ahead of Will Dendy and John Munro, with Cody Pride in the pole position, racing number 2 Cayman in 7th, with Noel Brinkham and Bastian Zenefels 8th and 9th, with David Belanger and Ross McGregor in 10th and 11th, with then Steve Hinden, Esport Designs Mastermind, in 12th. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen, for a 1-hour sprint race from flag to flag. This is going to be a thriller at the Nurburgring as they round the final corner and all get into line as they head towards the start-finish line. Luca Burke will be leading them away, and he's looking pretty eager to get underway as the lights go green. Burke gets a good start, and look behind. That's Buncombe right in the toe of Yannick Muller, moving across on Jenson Button down into the tricky turn 1 as drivers fan out into the hairpin. And it looks like Burke's managed to hold his lead ahead of Muller. Oh, there's a bit of contact actually there with Buncombe, which has turned him towards the other Rocket Esports, and contact between the two of them. That's Button on the outside, Buncombe on the inside, making his way through. We saw drama between these two last time out at Imola. Muller will be wanting to get one back over Alex Buncombe. It looks like the driver who's benefited from that is Will Dendy, who's nabbed his way up into 3rd place. A little bit of drama further back, but everyone seeming to get through relatively cleanly, even though that first Mercedes Arena section is so tight, David. Fantastic action so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yannick Muller must have been saying his prayers when he got tapped from Al Buncombe around the outside there. I had my heart in my mouth because I thought we were going to see JB get knocked out into turn 1, which was a little bit worrying, but they've managed to make it through. I'm interested to know. I thought John Munro might have had a better start than he did. He looked like he got a really good run off the flag, and he was alongside Al Buncombe at one point going into turn 1. But it just shows you how little gain you're going to get around the outside line into turn number 1 when you've got so many cars around you. He's actually dropped down to 7th now. And like you say, Tim, Will Dendy's been the real man who's profited from that, because he's got himself up from 5th into a podium position at the moment.
Yep, the Mob 7 Esports drive running slightly wide though through turns 10, and he's going to have Yannick Muller for company around the outside behind Jenson Button, who's slipped back from 3rd place down the order slightly. But a fantastic opening lap from these guys so far as Luca Burke extends, that 7/10, best part of 8/10 gap he's got at the front. Is certainly a larger margin than he had last time out at Imola after lap 1. As we see John Munro just ahead of Cody Pride and Zenefels in behind. There's a long train of Caymans trying to settle to the dispute as to who's going to lead who around the final corner. Bastian Zenefels, a driver who was unfortunate to pick up some damage in an incident midway through the race last time out and really dropped down the order. He's going to be wanting to make amends for round 1. So we see Dendy moving across on Button into turn 1. 3 wide, Button taps the back of Muller as they go into the hairpin. Dendy's going to be able to get the cut back on the SimSport Solutions car, and indeed does so, but he's going to be side by side with Button through the Mercedes Arena. He's able to hold on to, gain up into 3rd place, but Button's still looking for a way back through as they come down towards the tricky left-hander, which will then open up into the right. And Muller round the outside here of Dendy. Dendy able to hold the line and just close the door, but close stuff. And that's really allowing John Munro back into the action. He's going to have a windscreen full of Caymans in front, but he's going to be looking for a way through his second place finisher last time out. Noel Brinkman in the Pulse SimSport car going side to side with Steve Hendon down the hill. He's able to just nick up the inside. A little bit of paint traded between the two of them. And he's got teammate Rumlo Jensen in behind as they run down the hill towards the Dunlop hairpin. But it looks like Hendon maybe just be able to close the door. Moves over slightly in contact between the two of them. Brinkman, the door was closed and he just makes contact with a side of the number 80 and spins off to the inside. He's going to drop down the order. But at the top of the standing so far, Luca Burke opening up a 1.3 second lead over Al Buncombe, Button, Dendy and Muller, rounding out your top 5, with Munro in close quarters behind, and a 1 second gap. Well, it's less than a second as we see that camera shot. There's no way that's a second to Cody Pride and Bastian Zenefels, then Ross McGregor and David Belanger holding on to that 10th place off the start. 56 minutes to go, David. We're in for a long one here.
Absolutely, Tim. And if it's going to be anything like the first 4 minutes, it's going to be a fantastic 56 minutes remaining. And old foes reigniting, it seems. And Yannick Muller is not having the best of times of these Rocket Esports drivers, is he? He had a few coming together with Al Buncombe at Imola last week, and now he's getting the shift on from Jensen Button into turn 1 there as well. It's safe to say, I think, that the stewards are going to be very busy as we now see James Merrills in the Pink Pig MSL Motorsports car, number 89, under pressure from Jalek Valenduk at the moment, who's got a great run out of the Coca-Cola curve, going down towards turn number 1 into the Castrol S curve, and that run was incredible. He's managed to get past him. He looks like he's going to try and get past James Warren as well. He's down the inside, manages to make the move. He's going to be on the outside as they go into that Mercedes Arena complex. I don't think he's going to get the move done on both of them, but what a run that was. Oh, he's been contact from him. James Merrills is shifting him. He's managed to hold on to it though, and it's like watching touring cars rather than a Porsche Cayman Cup at the moment, Tim. Contact all over the place.
There is, and James Merrills, he's had coaching from touring car driver Tom Ingram, so he certainly knows how to get his elbows out. As we see contact between Muller and Dendy's going to send Dendy to the outside. He's going to be looking back for a way through, and indeed he runs off as he come down the hill, and Muller's off in front, so that's going to allow this train of 4 cars through. Munro, Pride, McGregor and Zenefels all seeming to benefit from the drama between those guys, with Belanger in behind, really looking for a way through it, as it looks like the number 64 of Zenefels running wide. More contact between the two of them, and he's flashing the lights, so something really went on between these guys. More paint traded between the two of them as they run up the hill through the Michael Schumacher S. Zenefels going to be looking for a way back through as quickly as possible, and he dives to the inside to turn 10. Cody Pride here in fifth in the number 2 Cayman, looking pretty solid in this split livery design. 3 wide behind. Belanger goes to the outside of Dendy. Contact between the two of them. Dendy spins and hits Belanger. I don't know how he's managed to keep a hold of that in the EGT challenge car. Flashing the lights indeed. He certainly feels like he's been the victim of some drama there. But these guys need to just keep it on the grey stuff, David. 54 minutes still to go.
Absolutely, Tim. I know we said we wouldn't win it in turn 1. It feels like people are trying to get points coming into lap number 3. This is ridiculous at the moment. I said the stewards are going to be busy. They've just they're going to have to reel out one of them enormous rounds of paper. They'll just drop it down and go for miles. There's so many incidents at the moment. I think what David Bellinger was doing there is he was flashing to Bastian Zenefels, because it was him and Dendy. Was it Dendy? I think it was, who had it coming together into the Dunlop curve, and then, understandably, I probably would have been in the same position myself. Bastian Zenefels has more contact in the picture-in-picture there. Cody Pride getting tapped by Yannick Muller. It's all going on at the moment. I know we could take a few lines through here, chaps, but let's try and wind it in a little bit. But I think it was a case of Zenefels just felt like he was a little bit aggrieved. He also got a little tap there. Understandably, with a bit of aggression running through the red mist descending, he tried to make that move going up into the Cumio curve, turn 11, and unfortunately, David Bellinger, although you said, Tim, a fantastic saves, he got tapped into the bit curve going onto the final onto the back straight. He was very much the passenger of their own little battle that was going on.
Yeah, sometimes you do get that pendulum effect where the car swings one way and you catch the slide and it swings back the other. But Dendy, who was involved in that collision, dropping down the order to 16th. This here we have Regan Mitchell in the number 69 Simsport car going side by side with Sandberg, who's managed to get himself up into 12th place. He's going to be looking to better that through the Dunlop curve and has done so. He is just going to snip in front of Mitchell on the run up the hill to the Michael Schumacher S. So that's another position gained for Sandberg up the hill in the Turn 1 Esports car. But Mitchell will be looking for a way back through with Hinden and John Clements in behind as they come through turns 10 and 11. One of the only places on the track you can get told off the track limits. But Mitchell looking confident in this race so far, looking in a decent position. But like we say so many times, David, it's top 10 who score points. And these guys, this quartet, although they're battling, they're dropping off the back of the points. And sometimes it's just maybe working together to bridge the gap to the drivers in front.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I mean, they're now nearly 2 seconds behind David Bellinger, who's of course the last points-paying member at the moment. We're seeing some interesting comments in chat about some of the quality of driving we've had so far. I won't choose to go through that, but you know who you are. The interesting one I did notice, Tim, was the fact that Michael Haffenden has asked whether these guys know there's over 50 minutes left in this race. You'd be hard fought to disagree with it, wouldn't you? You see Regan Mitchell under a bit of pressure here from James Clements, just about giving him enough room. No quarter given there. And it looks like Clements has made the move. Nice clean one there. For once, I would say, going into turn number 1.
Yeah, and that's really one of the best overtaking opportunities round this track, and it's definitely the action point so far this evening. Indeed, I think the whole of the track's going to end up being the action point and the talking point after the 50 minutes and 45 seconds remaining has elapsed. But at the top of the pile as it stands, it's Luca Burke who's stretching out 2.5-second lead from Al Buncombe, and Jenson Button rounds out the podium with John Munro, Cody Pride, Ross McGregor and Yannick Muller in 7th. Bastian Zennefeld's Rumley Jensen, one of the podium finishers last time out, he's actually just dropped down the order, I believe. So that's really unfortunate stuff for Jensen. I'm just seeing the timing screen's adjusted now. So yeah, he's dropped outside the top 10. Belanger then up to 9th, Sandberg in 10th. Here we have Darrell Upton in the podium sim racing number 21, one of the 9 podium sim racing cars that are taking part in this eSport Design Porsche Cayman Cup, running up the hill in front of Tim Weller and Team Economy McCulloch behind in the number 9. And they've got Chris Shaw from the Mob 7 Esports team in behind. This quartet fighting over 20th place down to 23rd. A really exciting battle further down the order indeed, and that's what we like to see, David. It doesn't matter if you're at the front or you're towards the back, the battling's still fun. You can still get your elbows out.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, you can see how much these guys are enjoying it, the fact they're battling all the way up and down the field, even though there's not necessarily points on offer for these guys a bit further down. And going back to the fact there's nine of the podium SimSport racing guys on there at the moment. It's hard to imagine that there's now 3 of them in a train at the moment, as you can see. Not hard to tell them apart. I do quite appreciate the fact they've gone for different colours, which makes it easy for us to differentiate at least as well. But battles all the way up and down the field, and different battles from what we expected to see, from what I personally expected to see. We've got some people higher up than we saw last week, and then we've got the likes of Noel Brinkman, for example, who's a lot further down than you would have expected. So he's got a lot of work to do if he's going to try and loosen the gap between him and Luca Burke, who's currently starting to run away with the lead a little bit.
Definitely. So here we have Oscar Sandberg in the number 120 turn 1 eSports car, running ahead of Rumley Jensen, who I think made a slight mistake and dropped back down the order. These guys scrapping over the final point up for grabs this evening, over a second and a half back from David Belanger in the number 22 EGT Challenge car up the road. Jensen's followed by Hinden in behind, who is involved in that early drama that was kicking off with Muller and co. But as they run up the hill through the Michael Schumacher-esque, looking all very calm and controlled, it looks like things are starting to settle down. Drivers evaluating where they are in the standings, maybe having a look around to see the gaps in front and behind, who they're going to be battling with and what mission they've got ahead of them, with 47, well, the best part of 48 minutes still to go this evening. John Munro in the Zancho SimSport number 25 car, running up the hill towards the Vidal chicane. He flicks through the left and the right, trying to drop Cody Pride in behind in the number 2 pole position racing car. Pride already making an improvement on his position last time out. He qualified 5th at Imola, finished 10th. So if he can stay inside the points, that'll be 2 top 10 finishes in a row. But it looks like he's going to better himself this time, as we see Moller going side by side with Zennefeld's down the start-finish straight and on the run into T1. Let's see if we get a clean manoeuvre into the hairpins. Zennefeld's looks like he's got the job done on Yannick Muller, who continues to fall back down the order now in 8th place, as Rumley Jensen, one of our podium finishers last time out, still battling away in 11th, with Steve Hinden behind and closing up very much so through the Mercedes arena. It looks like Hinden wants to get through as soon as possible. It's almost inside the rear of that whole SimSport 92 there, inside the boot of it. So really close racing from these guys. But it's nice to see that things have calmed down. Maybe they have looked at the top of their screens and seen there's 46.5 minutes still to go. But like you say, David, it's Luca Burke up top at the moment with nearly a 3-second lead as Jensen runs slightly wide on the run down the hill. That allows Hindon to close up. He's tucked in behind. Fantastic camera work here from our broadcast director, Steve Proudly. Hindon selecting not to go for a move that time down into Dunlop, but he might be able to sneak up the inside through the middle of the corner. Jensen understeering slightly through the middle of the banked curve, but it looks like the order has stayed the same up through the Michael Schumacher S is one of the best parts of the track, in my opinion. You really keep your foot flat to the floor and hang it out. Jensen maybe moving to the inside to defend, or indeed distract Sandberg in front. I think it was defending from Hindon, who still wants to find a way through, but it's Burke at the front who crosses the line shortly to start his 7th lap. He's got a 3-second advantage over Buncombe and Button behind. But really, we are starting to see things calm down here, David, but I'm pretty sure it will bubble up towards the end.
Oh, I've no doubt about it. I think, yeah, like you say, maybe people have gotten a little bit too overconfident, overzealous in the first couple of laps. You see gaps forming, you think I'll go for that one, and then that can obviously start to have a knock-on effect down the field. But you're absolutely right, Tim. They're starting to I don't want to say wind their neck in, because you can see some of the battles that is definitely not the case. But yeah, starting to get into a bit of a groove of things. We're starting to see lap times get a little bit quicker, as well as they're starting to get back into the swing of things after qualifying. Of course, completely different way of racing. You see Hindon going down the inside into Rumley. Jensen's going to manage to make the move stick. He's going to be looking for a top 10 position, which he was cruelly robbed of last week at Imola due to track limit penalties, giving himself a drive-through. Yeah, I'm sure he'll love the fact that we're mentioning that again. He wasn't particularly happy. We drew everyone's attention to it last week, but he's putting Rumley Jensen under an immense amount of pressure, which is causing now Regan Mitchell to get on the back of this train as well, Tim.
And that's one of the things we saw last time out at Imola. Really, if you start battling, you cost yourself time and allow other drivers into the fight, and that can just make your headache even stronger as Rune Jensen then rounds the turn 6, the full curve, as he runs down the hill with Hindon still tucked in behind. These guys, closest battle on track at the moment, as a few over second gaps start to extend between the drivers at the moment, as we see Hindon really trying to make a way through on Jensen. But like you say, David, Mitchell in close behind in the 69 SimSport racing car, the sole SimSport racing machine out on the grid this evening. Stephen Haley not taking part after a fantastic 5th place last time out, a broken steering wheel, which is unfortunate. We look forward to seeing Stephen back at the next race at Kyalami if he can get his rig sorted out indeed. But Jensen then rounding turn 11, and seems like Hindon might have disconnected. I can't see him on track, and I can't see him on the timing screen, so I wonder if there's been a problem for him there. That would be really unfortunate for the... Yeah, it sounds like we've lost him. Steve Proudly telling me it looks like he might have disconnected from the server, so that's really unfortunate for the mastermind behind the championship. He'll be looking for a way back into the points next time out at Kyalami, but that's really going to calm things down for Jensen. It's almost handed him some more space to breathe, but Mitchell closing in behind, the gap only 0.7 of a second, and these guys are battling over that final points position, with David Belanger in 9th place, over 2 seconds up the road, as we see Dean Allen battling away with Brinkman, one of the podium finishers last time out at Imola. And that's what we like to see, though, David. It doesn't matter if you're up the top last time. You've got to do the same again this evening if you want to score those points and have a nice, strong finish.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because, of course, over the 5 rounds, you've got a completely different set of tracks. Obviously, the Nurburgring is a completely different kettle of fish as opposed to Imola that we had last week. So it's clearly seeing how people are suited to it, whether it's setup, whether it's simply just driving style. Of course, this is it can be a very technical track in points, but it's also one, like you said, as we come see Luke Burke coming through the Schumacher S's. To answer Alan Ismay's point in the chat, who's going to be putting the fastest lap in, I would imagine it's probably this man at the moment, seeing as his gap is extending at the top. It's now 3.7 seconds back to Al Buncombe. Yeah, last lap was a 2:04.113, which is a pretty decent lap, if we may say so ourselves. I think, Tim, that's only about 3 or 4 tenths off of the eventual pole position time.
Yeah, it was close, and it's probably about 6 or 7 seconds faster than I could possibly do. So really fantastic lap from Burke. Last time out, he leads from Alex Buncombe in the number 23 Team Rocket Esports Cayman on your screen at the moment, donning those colours made famous by the Brawn GP Formula One car. As we cut back to Oscar Sandberg now, he is really being put under pressure from Jensen behind, and Mitchell closing up as well, going to make this duo a triplet soon as they come into the Vidal chicane, left and right, using all the curb. Mitchell choosing to stay off that curb, whether there was a slight mistake in the transition between the two apexes, costing him a bit of time. And we have seen, David, that once these cars get out of step and out of place, it's really difficult to get them back online.
Yeah, absolutely. The Porsche is a lively car, should we say? As confirmed by Steve Hinden in the chat. Fortunately, it was a disconnect, which is a real shame. Hopefully not the same reason why Oscar Sandberg disconnected last week. If I remember correctly, that was because German broadband decided to switch itself off for a testing phase, which is hopefully not going to happen again this evening. But he's under pressure from these two at the moment. But Rumle Jensen's almost in the worst position for it at the moment, because he's got to try and figure out a way to get past Oscar to get into that top 10 and get himself some championship points. But he's also going to be very careful for Regan Mitchell, who we're watching at the moment, because if he makes one mistake, Regan's not going to think twice. He's going to go straight down the inside or wherever he needs to make that position done, and then he'll have a go at Oscar Sandberg instead.
Definitely, and a number of drivers did disconnect last time out, one of them being, John Monroe, actually, who currently runs in 4th place, was unable to take part because he too had an internet outage in his area. So it's unfortunate when it's not one of your own errors that sees you leave the race, and hopefully we'll see Steve Hinden back next time. But as we cut back to Nathan Gibson in the 420 Podium Sim Racing car, just ahead of Alan Leon in the 777 EGT Challenge machine behind. Alan was in the wars a little bit last time out, but it's nice to see him back again this evening, and indeed getting stuck in with a fight for 28th position. As we see, unfortunately, it looks like Gabriel Lafreniere heads to pit lane in the number 16 EGT Challenge car, was just come out back onto track. That's unfortunate to see him drop down the order. These guys really getting stuck in with this championship, and it's fantastic to see with Daniel Wood in the Podium Sim Racing 29. Being Sarah Moore, the W Series driver, who had a difficult time out at Imola, getting involved in some drama on the opening lap. She really struggled to fight her way back into the action, eventually finishing 26th position, which is where she races at the moment. So looking to see how Sarah Moore can make some moves this evening. Looked like behind Leon, going slightly wide through turn 10. That's going to drop him off the back of Gibson. So a lot of work to do for Leon to close back up to this 3 cars ahead in the battle for 26th place. And gaps starting to open up now between the runners and riders this evening. And sometimes that's how it is with Spec Series single make racing. You can see these pockets of action start to break up, David. But like we say, make one mistake and you can watch the train sail on by, as we see Raddenbury challenging Charlie Martin into turn 1. It looks like Martin able to hold 23rd position at the moment. But these guys looking like they're going to be settling this dispute on their own. Not too many cars around them. They're 7 seconds back from Tim Weller in front, and they've got 5 seconds over James Merrills in the 89 MSL Motorsports car. So maybe not going to happen in this situation, Dave. But like I was saying, get moved out wide, maybe find yourself offline. You've got to stand by and wave the train through.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And it's interesting to note there's very few drivers, barring maybe the likes of Will Dendy, Bastian Zenefels, to name a couple, who aren't necessarily in a battle of more than just themselves. It really proves a testament to this Spec Series, and it does also mean that, as you can see, if you do tend to drop off from a train, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult unless you've got that raw pace over the guy in front of you, that to really get back into that battle. So that's what we're seeing. As you said, we're seeing pockets of people kind of bring themselves together, which in turn is making for a brilliant spectacle. Would you believe we're already nearly 23 minutes into this race? We're nearly at half distance, and we've seen enough action for probably a 90-minute race, I would suggest.
Enough action for a 90-minute race, or indeed an entire Formula One season to some extent, as we see James Warren here in the number 1 pole position racing esports Cayman, looking rather healthy in behind Will Dendy, who's dropped down the order. Unfortunate for him being involved in those incidents early on, but it looks like he's going to do his best to fight back through the field. Might be carrying some damage, which is unfortunate because Dendy did suffer a similar fate last time out, picking up some damage to his car early on in the race at Imola. As James Warren looking to the inside of Yannick Vanenduk, who actually, was going around the outside of him there. So in the Sim Racing Hub International number 301, looking fairly confident on his debut in the series, not racing last time at Imola. It's nice to see this battle in the middle of the grid, as it looks like Brinkman looking up the inside. As we hear that at the front of the order, Jenson Button is taking time out of his teammate in the battle for the podium positions, who's managing to close up around 2/10 a lap on Alex Buncombe. So wouldn't be surprised to see those two getting together. And I also wouldn't be surprised, David, to see no team orders between the two of them. You want to beat your mates, but you also want to beat your teammates. And these two guys are real world racing drivers, and they know all about mind games and getting one up on your teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually read Jenson Button's autobiography recently, and I'm sure I vaguely remember him saying that the most important battle is your teammate. You're only beating them 10 times out of 10, and they'll. I'm sure there'll be no quarter given between the two of them once Jenson, if he does manage to get up on the back of our Buncombe. You can see on the picture he's only probably 4 or 5 car lengths back, so he's going to be well within our Buncombe's mirror shots. It's going to be interesting to see how that time starts to dissipate, if it does, or if it carries on as it is at the moment.
But we hear that Luca Burke, leader at the moment, extending his gap by 0.4 of a second on that previous lap. So he's really in a groove at the moment. 0.4 faster than anyone out there at the Nurburgring GP Strecker at the moment, as we really did see in the picture-in-picture briefly there, just how close the two Rocket Esports guys are getting. James Warren throwing his number 1 Cayman through the chicane. Rumley, Jensen, Mitchell and Sandberg here together, all still trying to settle this. Just 10th place. They've got a 3.5 second deficit to David Belanger in front in the EGT Challenge car. These guys have really got together, and Mitchell really closed up on the back of these two. Sandberg doing enough though at the moment, it seems, just to keep Jensen and Mitchell behind. It looks like he's quick in all the right places, which is sometimes better to be, as Jensen actually gets into the back of him, checks up, nearly makes contact with Mitchell as he tries to file back in line. Mitchell swooping around the outside on the exit of the Mercedes arena, manages to pick up another position. And that was that concertina effect that we see so often. Cars backing up through the tricky, tighter sections can just kind of just delay into each other, really. And sometimes internet issues can play into that, with Sarah Moore here in 26th position, leading this train of cars. Nice to see Alan Leon's actually got himself back into this fight. So he's dusted himself off after he ran off track and has got back into the action, fighting past Nathan Gibson in the 4-2-0. So it's nice to see this battle. Nice to see Sarah as well racing on and pushing on. Wonder if she will be able to close that 7-second gap to James Merrills. I'm not too sure, because it looks like she's going to get locked in battle with these cars, and that might cost them time. But with 33.25 minutes to go, nearly halfway, David, we're getting there. Seems like we've had enough action to go the 60 minutes, but I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more still to be had.
Absolutely, yeah. Regan Mitchell now going to take his chance to put the pressure and twist the screw on to Oscar Sandberg, and it's exactly what I expected to happen, just not necessarily in the way it did. Seeing Regan Mitchell get up into 11th place and get past Rumley Jensen, and they've actually dropped him to an extent. They're now a second gap back to Rumley, so obviously he did have that knock, and don't know whether he's carrying damage as a result. We've seen picture in picture now. Jenson Button, look how close he is to our Buncombe, Tim. He's right on the back of him. It'd be interesting to see whether he can start to draw the gap back to Luca Burke if he does manage to get past him. Of course, we heard a few moments ago you mentioned that Luca was 0.4 quicker than anyone on a lap or two ago. But Regan Mitchell as well, like I say, I mean, it's important to note, Tim, this is the battle for the final points paying position. So this is just as important as the battle in the little picture in the bottom right hand corner, I would say.
And as it comes to the end of the season, in a few weeks' time at Donington Park, every point is going to count. So this 1 point for Regan Mitchell could see him finish ahead or behind of someone else in the championship. But yeah, Button, as you can see, right-hand side of your screen, really closing up to the back of Alex Buncombe. The age-old adage is that catching is one thing and passing is another. Button's going to have to continue this momentum forward if he wants to pass the number 23 in front of him, his teammate Al Buncombe, as they climb the hill through the Michael Schumacher-S using all the curb available. Buncombe electing to just take his time coming back over to the right-hand side for turns 10 and 11. And it just looks like that through every braking point, every apex and every acceleration point, that Button's just able to take a little bit of more time out of his teammate in the battle for second place as it stands with 31 minutes remaining. But I wonder if Button's going to bide his time here or whether he's going to want to get past and kick on to catch Luca Burke. The gap is hovering around 5.5 seconds at the moment. So there is plenty of time to make that, to eradicate that deficit, David. But before you know it, sometimes the time starts flying away and you're running out of laps to get the job done.
Yeah, you're too right, Tim, and I think it'd be interesting to see what Jensen does. If it was me, I mean, if you look at the times, it's the gap between Luca and Al Buncombe is gapping ever so slightly. It's nothing too significant. It's around about a tenth or so a lap from what I'm seeing at the moment. If that is the case, then that you'd imagine, based on the difference that Jensen is gapping on bringing towards Al Buncombe at the moment, you would think that he's probably a little bit closer than, a little bit faster than Luca Burke at the moment. So if it was me in his shoes, obviously I don't have the experience that he does, of course, whether be it real world or virtual, I'm sure. But if it was me, I'd be trying to get past Al as soon as I could, just to see if I'm able to do it. Because, like you say, 30 minutes left, plenty of time to get a 5-second gap down to less than a second and get yourself into a passing position. So I'm sure that's what he'll be focusing on and trying to claw that gap back to the current race leader.
So we saw that Yannick Muller dived to pit lane, and indeed looks like he's dropped off our timing screens on the left-hand side. So I wonder what action or what drama has befallen the number 43 SimSport Solutions driver. But that changes the picture of the battle you see on screen at the moment, because whereas only one of these positions was going to score a point, that triplet now have two points paying positions. So one of them isn't going to be scoring this evening, the battle between Sandberg, Mitchell and Jensen. But on screen now, the battle we've spoken about all evening, it seems, between these Rocket Esports drivers. Buncombe leads Button by a margin of 4/10, but it could be anything less than that, really. You could throw a small blanket over these two. They're so close together. Button closing up in the slipstream on the run up towards the chicane. He's looking to the inside. Is he going to go for a move? Indeed he does. It looks like Buncombe maybe backed out of that one to let Button through. He raced last time out, so he's got points in hand. Button is still fighting back, obviously, after missing out last time, this being his inaugural appearance in the series. But a pretty easy move, David. And sometimes, although you want to fight your teammates hard, it's sometimes the times when a margin is left, you don't want to cost the team any points.
Yeah, Jensen is faster than you, Al. I think I heard coming through the radio waves just then. It certainly looked like something that was orchestrated, and that's absolutely fair enough. If that's something they want to do, and as you pretty much orchestrated the point, Tim. Al's got points on the board. He was fifth in the race at Imola. Jensen, of course, couldn't make it for other reasons. He was otherwise engaged, so he's going to be wanting to try and get as many points on the board. And I'm sure Al will be just as happy with the third place and a step on the podium as he will be with second, especially if he can continue on the way he is. So it should be interesting to see how it carries on. And now it's just a case of what can Jensen do to break down that now 6.5 second gap up towards Luca Burke.
So I don't think that battling would have cost them that much time, because it wasn't, like we say, they didn't battle it out. They just kind of exchanged positions relatively cleanly. That just shows the pace of Burke, and now 6.3 second gap at the top of the pile to Button. Then it's Buncombe. John Munro looking rather healthy in fourth place, a 1.8 second advantage over Cody Pride. And then Ross McGregor a little bit further back. But James Warren going side by side with Yannick Valenduk on the run down the hill towards the Dunlop hairpin. Following in behind, Noel Brinkman in the 91 Pulse SimSport car as he goes up the inside. Warren able to get the move done on the 301, and that's going to open the door for Brinkman to find a way through. But Warren gets all kinds of out of shape on the exit. That's going to cost him plenty of time on the run up the hill. And Brinkman, in a couple of corners, has got 2 positions out of all of that. So really it can cost you time making a mistake, and a lot of time indeed, as we see Mitchell trying to get the cut back on Sandberg out of turn 11 onto the back straight with Jensen in behind. Sandberg, Mitchell and Jensen battling for 2 of the final 10 points paying positions as we look to 26 and a half minutes to go. Button has managed to take a small bite out of that margin that Burke has at the top of the standings, but with 26 and a half minutes to go, he's going to have to start getting a shimmy shake on if he wants to close up towards the end of the race. Jorge Villa asking in the chat, is this series a reverse grid for race 2? No, at the we wish, if this is the action that a qualifying and race can give, then a reverse grid certainly would shake things up. This is the only race this evening, a 60-minute flag-to-flag encounter, and our grid was decided by a 15-minute qualifying, which will feature at every race in the season. But Mitchell now looking for a way past Sandberg, who runs wide through the Mercedes-Benz arena. That's going to open up the door for Mitchell to go around the outside, and a move he made a few laps ago, he repeats, and now up into 9th place. Mitchell looking like the man on a mission at the moment. Let's see now if he has the pace to stretch away from these two, and indeed whether Jensen can find a way past the Turn 1 Esports Oscar Sandberg in the number 120 car. And as we've seen all night, David, sometimes you have to wait for that little mistake from the driver in front to fight your way through.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim. It's interesting to see there's quite a few errors at the moment, but I mean, it's hard to say they wouldn't be making any errors when the amount of pressure they're being put on them is such as what we're seeing at the moment. As you now see, Rumle Jensen's now going to put the squeeze back onto Oscar Sandberg for the position that it was at the point they were in front and behind of each other just sort of 5 or 6 laps ago. Looking at the time on board, I can see Jensen Button's taking another couple of tenths out of that gap at the front at the moment. As now Al Bunkum's he's lost out by the looks of it. I don't know what's happened. Maybe he must have had a mistake at some point. And John Monroe skipped himself up into 3rd place. If my maths is correct, Tim, there's going to be roughly about 11, maybe 12 laps left at the time with the time we have. So we're looking at around about half a second a lap Jensen's going to have to take, plus obviously getting the position done as well. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he will do that. But Al Bunkum's now got the task of having to try and regain his podium position spot because of what I can only assume it would have been an incident or a little mistake partway through that lap.
I wonder whether Bunkum's may be struggling with tyre pressures as well, the way Button was able to close up and get past with very little resistance from his teammate. I wonder if we're going to see Bunkum maybe slip back, or maybe he's going to be able to drive round whatever problem he's facing or mistake he's made. But Sandberg here looking for a way back past Mitchell, who does run deep into turn 1. Sometimes you can make that work and not cost yourself a position or too much time. This trio very close together. Jensen wanting to get back past Sandberg for that 10th place. So a really close battle between these guys at the moment, and it is costing them a bit of time. Mitchell yet to really scamper up the road, but they have got 6 seconds a margin between themselves and Belanger in front, as we see Will Dendy picking up a drive through in 12th place. So after the dramas in the opening couple of tours of this Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit that saw him drop down the order after contact with Yannick Valenduk, Yannick Muller, he's now falling down the order even more so with that drive through. John Clements here in the number 88 podium sim racing car in 14th, one of the drivers that will benefit from that drive through handed to Dendy. He's got Brinkman in front, one of the podium finishers last time out, and James Warren behind in the number 1 pole position racing car. So we are seeing these group form, and with less than 23 minutes to go, there's plenty of battles still to be decided, and it looks like Bunkum has been able to hold on to the back of Monroe. The gap's 7 tenths, so he hasn't dropped too far off. But sometimes, Dave, it's all about just brushing yourself off and getting back down to business. Sometimes it's really difficult to get your head back into that rhythm after you've made a mistake.
Yeah, it can take a couple of laps, as you mentioned there, Tim. So I'm sure Al will start to do that. Of course, he's got a lot of experience in the real world racing, and he's continuing to evolve that race after race in the sim world as well. So it's the same principles. You're going to have an incident like you did there. It might have been a run onto the grass, might have dipped his toe into the gravel and maybe gone for a little bit of an excursion. But all it is, you've got to reset your mind, get yourself back in, couple of laps, get yourself back into the flow of things. And it looks like he's done a decent job of that so far. What he'll be focusing on now, I'm sure, is one of two things. One, keep Cody Pride behind him. He doesn't want to drop too much further down the order. A fourth and a fifth in the first 2 rounds is going to be something very, very positive indeed. I'm sure he'll agree with me. But he'll also be keeping an eye on Oscar Sandberg and Rumley Jensen coming together there. It looked like Rumley was going down the inside into the second part of the Mercedes-Benz arena, and I don't know whether Oscar just didn't know he was there, but he just kind of shut the door and unfortunately just turned in on Rumley Jensen and nudged him a bit wide. Fortunately, Rumley's not lost too much time, but that does bring Will Dendy back into the equation, of course, subject to his drive-through. But we'll have to keep an eye on it, Tim, because if you look back to the battle between Noel Brinkman, John Clements and James Warren, we've not seen too much of them battling at the moment. Now, they're only 6 seconds down the road. Now, yes, it seems like a lot, but we've seen how much these lot have been battling. And, of course, these two, who we're focusing on at the moment as Regan Mitchell's sort of scarf on the road to an extent, these guys are not short of any form of aggressive battling. So if these guys keep doing what they're doing, that could give anyone down to sort of James Warren a chance of potentially being in with a shout for some points at the end of this race.
Yeah, we saw at the end of the opening round at Imola last week that it really wasn't decided until the checkered flag as Jensen looks to the inside of Sandberg up through turns 10 and 11. But Button really unable to close that gap down to Burke for the lead. It's still over 5 seconds. Munro in behind doing little as well to catch up as Jensen's really tucked under the rear wing of Sandberg. They come through the right-hand kink and head up towards the Vidal chicane. Sandberg able to just kind of close the door really on Jensen, chop across the front of him through the left and the right into the final corner at the Coca-Cola curve. Sandberg going in pretty defensive nice and early on. It looks like Jensen just ran a little bit wider, but like you say, David, Buncombe's really going to have to see if he can hold on to that position and just battle on through now. It's almost like the cards have been dealt as Dendy heads to pit lane to serve his drive through with under 20 minutes to go. A third of the race still left to play out on your screens this evening. You're watching the Esport Designs Cayman Cup, powered by Sim Racing GP and brought to you by Sim Sport Solutions. And an exciting encounter so far. Darrell Upton here battling side by side with teammate Conor McCulloch in the number 9 podium Sim Racing car. They go side by side into turn 1. Darrell going to be holding that line round the outside into turn 2 and maybe trying to park the car on the apex a little bit there to stop Conor behind, getting a cut back into the third part of this Mercedes-Benz arena, and he has managed to hold on to that position. So nice clean racing from these guys. Over 10 seconds back on the battle in front that contains Dendy, Allen and Valenduk you were talking about, David. It looks like Dendy hasn't lost too much time in serving that drive through. I'm sure the timing screen will update when he next passes through a checkpoint. And there we go. Just as I say that, he tumbles down the order. So we'll keep an eye out to see where he emerges. Unlikely to see him really fight his way up into the points, although I'll say that and then see it happen as we see Jensen and Sandberg battling into turns 10 and 11. And it looks like Jensen really is going to be getting this job done soon. He nearly had it done through the Mercedes-Benz arena, and Sandberg almost closed the door on him. Jensen was getting a bit out of shape through the left, but wouldn't be surprised to see Jensen making a move as they run up the hill towards the Vidal chicane. Jensen looking to the inside, maybe just to distract Sandberg in front, and sometimes that can cost you time. It might be better just sitting in behind and really trying to force an unforced error. These battling over the final points position, 10th place. As we head into the final 18 minutes, it is Luca Burke who leads a 5.7 second gap back to Jensen Button, with John Munro rounding out your podium positions 4 seconds back from him. Then it's Al Buncombe in 4th, looking like he's holding on rather nicely. He hasn't fallen too far off Munro, a second, and he's got over 3.5 seconds in the bag over Ross McGregor. Then as we go to Cody Pride in 6th with Bastien Zenefels, David Belanger and Regan Mitchell in 9th with Oscar Sandberg, as we've seen on screen, rounding out the top 10. But a nice performance here from Cody Pride, dropping out down the order last time due to a couple of mistakes in the second half of the opening round at Imola. And it's nice to see him getting back into a rhythm and scoring some strong and healthy points in this second race.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, got caught up in a couple of incidents, if I remember, a couple of them going through Tamburello at Imola last week. So it's good to see he's been out of the wars to an extent. But yeah, certainly doing a decent job. It does look like he's dropped down, like you say, Tim. And then we'll see Oscar Sandberg still under pressure from Rumley Jensen. And that is causing Noel Brinkman to start to close that gap. He's only 4.6 seconds back. So he's gained a couple of seconds on the last couple of laps. But you can just see Rumley trying to make any form of headway through there. I think we can clearly see that he's faster. But the two of them are just losing so much time. They've already dropped 5 seconds back to Regan Mitchell, who's now disappeared off into the distance up in 9th place. And it's starting to become a real detriment to them both, because there's people behind them who are closing up. Oscar's going to be thinking, great, I'm still in pole position, as it were, to get this final points paying position. But any little mistake, as he's made a couple of them so far, he's going to be under pressure, and this pressure is going to pay soon enough. And as you mentioned, Tim, it's not necessarily a case of, look, I'm in a faster car than you, I'm just going to shoot on up the road down the straight. It's got to be a case of trying to force that error from Oscar that Rumley's going to be trying to do, and he's certainly trying his hardest to make it happen. But Oscar's starting to, he's still continuing to be quite a tough act to break down.
Indeed, he seems to be doing just enough to keep Jensen behind as they're catching traffic in front. That's the 16 of Lafreniere, who is a lap down at the moment. Jensen looking to the outside. I wonder whether the EGT challenge driver in front will get out of the way with the blue flags waving, or whether he's going to play a part in this battle, and indeed he does so through the two left-handers of the Mercedes-Benz arena, staying over to track left and keeping out of the way. That's fantastic driving from him not to get involved in this battle. But yeah, Sandberg is really quick enough in the right places, it seems, on those important corners that maybe lead towards overtaking opportunities, like into turn 1 or into the Vidal chicane. He's just able to do enough to keep Jensen behind, which is sometimes all it takes, is just being quick enough in the right places. The lead between Burke and Button for the race victory is 6 seconds now. So just as Button manages to take a couple of tenths out of the Zansho SimSport driver, he's just able to match him, and Burke able to push that lead back out to him. But John Clements here in the 88 podium sim racing car with James Warren in tow behind. These guys battling for 13th place. Looks like they've been locked together all evening. I wonder whether Warren, well, I was going to say if Warren's going to be able to set up a move, but as he runs slightly wide through the Michael Schumacher S and kicks up the dust, he's lost a couple of tenths to the driver in front of the number 88, with Brinkman for the best part of 4.5 seconds up the road. But as it stands at the moment, Luca Burke leads Jensen Button. It's John Munro who rounds out the podium, with Alex Buncombe still holding on to 4th place with a 3.6 second lead over Ross McGregor. Then it's Cody Pride in 6th place, Bastian Zenefels in 7th. As we see now, it's Rumley Jensen really looking for a way back past. But yeah, Belanger in 8th, then with Regan Mitchell 9th, and then these two on your screen at the moment. Sandberg and Jensen battling out for the final points position with 13.5 minutes to go. David, is Jensen going to get through? And if so, when's he going to get it done?
I think I can answer the first question, Tim. I think he will get through. As to when it's going to happen, I honestly couldn't tell you. I think, like you mentioned it a moment ago, Oscar just seems to have the speed in the right places, and he's made a couple of mistakes. But when he has, he's fortunately for himself, he's made mistakes when there's been that little gap between him and Jensen behind. And these guys have been locked in it pretty much since lap number 1, turn number 1, from what I can remember. And it shows the quality of the drivers that we've got in the field tonight, of course, where you can see these two guys who were quick in their rights. I mean, Rumley Jensen, obviously podium position in the last race at Imola, and Oscar Sandberg, as you mentioned right at the top of the broadcast, Tim, was running in the top 5 before unfortunately getting disconnected from the race last week. So these guys are proving that the quality of the field is such that they're now still currently fighting for 10th and 11th place. And yes, to answer your question, I think he will get the move done, Will Jensen, but as of when, I mean, he's got 12.5 minutes to do it, and it could be any time between now and then.
We see Burke at the top of the pile. He's leading the order. He's lapping half a second faster than anyone else out there on track at the moment. So he really is the man to beat, as Sandberg gets all kinds of crossed up on the exit of turn 10, manages to get back on the racing line, turn 11, and closing the door on Jensen, who tucks in behind, lights ablaze on the pole. Sim Sport number 92, Cayman. Wouldn't be surprised to see him start flashing the lights, although that is against the sporting regs of the esports design. Cayman Cup, you're not allowed to flash your lights at the driver in front. Boos from Steve Proudly over the intercom. That's something we like to see, a bit of a touring car tactic. Get the lights on full beam and start trying to distract the driver in front. But Jensen's certainly doing what he can at the moment to try and disturb Sandberg and get this position, the last point, up for grabs. And 1 point could make all the difference at the end of the season. Brumley Jensen finishing third last time out at Imola has really dropped down the order this evening, but that's the nature of this series. Spec racing with cars all of the same. The only difference is the driver behind the wheel and the setup they've managed to put together for the car. But Burke is really the man to beat, and he's the one who seems to have got the best package at the moment, leading convincingly over Jensen Button. And it seems to be an age before we see Button cross over the same timing line and trigger the gap, which at the moment stands at around 6 seconds. Then it's Munro in third, rounding out the podium. But this is what we like to see, David. Battles up and down the order. Tim Weller and Daniel Upton going side by side into turn one.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. It looked like Upton had the run on Tim Weller then, but didn't manage to make the move stick. Maybe he just dropped back and maybe try not to cause too much in terms of incidents. I'm sure you're looking forward to doing some interviews after this as well, Tim. Of course, you've got 3 very quick drivers and a chance to see what's happening. I mean, from my perspective, you talk about the fact that always you see Dan Upton going up the inside of Tim Weller there. Lovely little move. He's not managed to keep it though. It's just double backed from the left to the right, and then Tim's holding on to fight another day. But I mean, I'm not going to worry about that for the moment now, because we've got this battle going on between 2 teammates, which is what you like to see. He's going down the inside into the left and then into the right again, and he's managed to make the move stick this time. And again, it proves the seriousness that these guys are taking it. Yes, we've mentioned it is an invitational series. To get into the series, you need to have a livery designed and made by Steve Hinden, of course, of eSport Designs. And I mean, what a lovely little perk to have. Not only do you get a fantastic looking livery, you get a chance to run with some of these fantastic drivers, as well as Rumley Jensen going around the outside of the Coca-Cola curve on Oscar Sandberg. This looks like it could be the time, Tim. He's just gone a little bit wide there and he's dropped back inside. But you talked about it a couple of laps ago. He's not necessarily had the runs going into the overtaking spots. He's a little bit further back at the moment, so maybe a little bit too far back to make some sort of move unless he gets a decent draft. But he's still he's twisting that screw, and he's not going to let this one down. I think he's going to be a little bit frustrated if he can't get this move done in the last 9 and a bit minutes.
Yeah, so with under 10 minutes to go, Jensen maybe trying a surprise move on the Turn 1 Esports. Oscar Sandberg, driver in front, maybe looking for a move at an unexpected point to really catch the class winner at the Nurburgring 24 Hours 2020 off guard. These two have really been locked together all evening. Mitchell has really scarpered up the road, but as we look to the top left, the timing screen, Jensen Button over a second faster than Luca Burke on that previous lap. So he's really closed the gap down on the race leader. With 8.5 minutes to go, he's going to need to keep pulling those times out of the bag if he wants to close up on the race leader. As we cut to Button on screen at the moment in the 24 Team Rocket Esports car, looking in fine fettle on his debut in the series, running through the backstretch and up towards the Vidal chicane for what is the 24th time. Button able to close that gap, and it looks like it's hovering around that 5-second mark, even more so on the run into the Coca-Cola curve. We'll see the time, see if it changes across the line. But Button, if he wants to start closing up towards Burke, he's going to have to really kick on now. Taken 4 tenths out again, but David, that might just not be enough to get up to Burke and then even get past with 7 3/4 minutes remaining.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that Jensen's going to have all the racecraft up his sleeve if he does manage to get closer to him. But with what I think we're probably talking about 3-4 laps at a push left, as I think Rumley Jensen had a touch on Oscar Sandberg there going into Coca-Cola curve. That's going to put him a little bit behind. And I mean, this battle is just not going to end anytime soon. The gap now within 5 seconds from Button up to Burke at the moment. So yes, it's doable if we have runs like we had on the last couple of laps. I wonder if that was Luca Burke. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he was just taking it a little bit easier, trying to save the car, save its legs before the end of the race. But it's not beyond the realms of possibility, if potentially a little far-fetched, that we might see a battle for the lead before the end of this race.
All the reason then to stay tuned to the second round of the Esport Designs Porsche Cayman Cup here at the Nurburgring. If you haven't subscribed or liked the video already that you're watching, please do so. We'd love to see you back again next time out for round 3 at Kyalami for more of the same. I believe will be served up for us as we head down to South Africa, but it's Rune Jensen really putting the heat on Sandberg as they run down the hill. Jensen really trying to just pride at these opportunities and see if he can get away through. He's going to have to pull something out of the bag though, because Sandberg's just able to keep the advantage over him and keep that position, which is the final points spot this evening. Formula One points up for grabs, top 10 scoring. So Jensen's going to have to try something. Actually looks like he's lost a little bit of time on the run up the hill through the Michael Schumacher-esque. Sandberg able to breathe a little bit, but the gap at the front is coming down even more so now. It's 4 seconds is Button behind Burke, so another few tenths, 4 tenths again faster on that lap. So he is doing what he needs to do, David, but that timer is running out. It's going to only be maybe 2 or 3 laps at best, and with a 4-second advantage and 4 tenths a lap, the maths, or my very basic maths indeed, doesn't quite add up, and that's not going to be enough.
No, absolutely. I mean, wonder if we might see shades of Canada 2011 if that's what Jensen looks to be doing. Hopefully we don't see Luca Burke spinning off through, if we're looking in terms of track maps, through the Mercedes arena where Jensen is at the moment. But yeah, he's doing all he can, and that's all he's able to do at the moment. He's managing to bridge the gap with, like we say, three laps or so remaining. He's doing all he can to close the gap. But of course, like you say, Spec Series, it's going to be very difficult to make the move if he does get there, but he's certainly setting us up for what I would class as a grandstand finish with just over 6 minutes remaining.
Grandstand finish indeed, and this is the battle on your screen at the moment, which is Sandberg in 10th with Jensen and Brinkman, the 2 Pulse Sim Sport cars closing up behind. These guys were on the podium last time out. As we see picture in picture, it's Pride and McGregor going at it for 5th place, and a nice battle well inside the points there. But a change of fortunes for these 2 Pulse Sim Sport cars. Podium last time out, as I said, and now scrapping over the final point, and it looks like Brinkman might be in the hot seat if drama unfolds between Jensen and Sandberg in front. And these guys have come to blows a couple of times this race, exchanged paints indeed, so we'll have to see if Jensen can get the move done and get it done cleanly. Otherwise it might present an opportunity behind for his teammate Brinkman closing up indeed. The gap's down to below a second for the first time in the race. And these guys, we spoke to them at the end of the race at Imola, David. No team orders between them. There's a little bit of indecisiveness about whether they were going to race to help each other or race against each other. As you see Jensen going to the outside into turn 10, and he's managed to get up alongside, but runs slightly wide all over the curb. Can he get up the inside of Sandberg into 11? No, he can't. So Sandberg lives to fight another day and is really clutching at straws to hold on to that final points position, and that's allowed Brinkman to really close up behind on this too. So David, all to play for, 3.5 minutes to go.
Oh, was that the chance for Rune Jensen? He'd be kicking himself. He got such a good run through the S's, didn't he, as he came up to the top of the hill, managed to get round the outside, but just wasn't able to get the move finished and done. Yet the gap between Jensen Button and Luca Burke seems to be stagnating a little bit, sitting around about the 3.5 second mark. So I'm not sure whether we're going to see too much. But yeah, you mentioned the team orders, or I say the lack of they're there by lack of team orders between Rune Jensen and Noel Brinkman after the interviews from last week. So we'll see what happens here. If it was me, if I was in Noel Brinkman's shoes, I'd be shouting at him, going, you've had 40 minutes of trying to get past him. Let me have a go at it and see if I can do anything. But I don't think Rimley's going to be giving him that chance, is he? I mean, we saw how close he got on the about half a lap ago. If he can get a run like he did out of the S's, then we'll see whether he does it. As James Merrills, we're hearing, has got himself a drive-through. You see him in the picture in the bottom corner at the moment. So he's the second driver to have got one, and the only place I could imagine that would happen to him is actually as you come out of the Mercedes-Benz arena. So clearly pushing their luck as they use the fact that you've got obviously the Nordschleife configuration going to cut through there. They're using that, and it's in turn going to drop him a little bit further down the positions, and as a result he's trying to get past Sarah Moore at the moment. It's going to be ultimately for nothing, unfortunately.
Yeah, the driver's definitely using all of the track and then some. Such are the margins between this fantastic grid here, the Esport Design Porsche Cayman Cup, with around 2 minutes to go, really. So I think we'll have one lap, if not two, from Luca Burke. It decides really up to him to see if he decides to maybe back off a little bit and take the checkered flag at the end of this one. That would be a risky game with Jenson Button 3.5 seconds back. Merrill's looking up the inside of Moore into turn one as he manages to get the job done on the W Series driver into the Mercedes-Benz arena. Looks like he's going to be able to hold that position. But like you say, David, all for nothing with the drive-through still to be taken. But if Sandberg's job of keeping one Pole Sim Sport car behind wasn't hard enough, he's going to have to do the job of keeping two, as Brinkman has closed in on these guys. And Jensen is looking more fired up than ever with, 80 seconds remaining on the clock, looking towards the inside at the Coca-Cola curve. Unable to get the job done there, just able to slow Sandberg up enough, though, to leave him still within a fighting chance. Brinkman in behind, 4/10 back as we head on to, I think I'm pretty confident this will be the final lap, but we'll see when Burke crosses the line in about a minute's time as he rounds the turn 6, I think, heading down the hill towards the Dunlop hairpin. Jensen really wearing a hole on the back of that Sandberg Cayman in front. If he's already burnt off the paint and vinyl wrap with those headlights, he'll surely be taking off a bit of paint with the front of his Cayman shortly. He really wants to get through, heading out of the Mercedes-Benz arena, then onto the short chute down towards the left and right, heading down the hill. Really exciting track indeed, the Nurburgring, a fan favourite for many, and I'm sure one that the drivers are enjoying. But Luca Burke, in your picture-in-picture, you can actually just see Button. Sometimes when the camera shot is wide enough, you can see the 2009 Formula One World Champion behind. The gap still hovering around those 3.8 seconds last time through. So time is running out, and with 2 seconds on the clock, we're going to hit zero. So this is the final lap of the race. Burke's going to remain unchallenged as he comes through the Vidal chicane and into the Coca-Cola curve for one last time. Out onto the pitch straight, the number 87 Sancho Simsport driver has been the man to beat this evening and has been untouchable once again as he crosses the line to take victory at round 2 at the Nurburgring of the Porsche Esport Design Cayman Cup. Button crosses the line behind a valiant effort to close up, with John Munro taking the final spot on the podium. Alex Bunkum's going to cross the line in 4th place with Ross McGregor, Cody Pride, Bastian's NFL's taking 7th place, with David Belanger doing a fantastic job to take 8th place, with Regan Mitchell in 9th as it stands. With Oscar Sandberg on your screen at the moment, looking like he's going to hold off Rumle Jensen, something he's done for the best part of 55 minutes to take the final points paying position. Jensen in behind, a podium finisher last time out, is down in 11th, with Noel Brinkman, his teammate, behind in 12th. David, a really exciting race from start to finish, and once again, it wasn't over till it was over.
I'm going to need to lie down, Tim. I don't know about you, mate. What a race that was, and brilliant work from Luca Burke. I mean, he commanded that race, didn't he? It was very much similar procedure to what he did last week. He certainly put himself into the driving seat, no pun intended, in terms of the championship for this Porsche Cayman Esports Design Series. I did think that Jensen might claw it back. I think it was maybe a case, and hopefully we'll find out in the interviews if we get a chance to speak to Luca as well. It might well have just been the case of the fact that he was just withholding a little bit of pace. We saw how quick he was. I'm sure he took fastest lap as well, and we'll get an extra point for that. So he'll take the Grand Chelem, as I understand it's called, or the perfect race, whatever you want to call it, whatever region you're in. But what a race from him! And I mean, we were fantastic. We had action all the way up and down the field, and credit to Oscar Sandberg. I thought he was going to lose that top 10 finish, and he somehow managed to pull it back. Unbelievable stuff.
Fantastic driving from Burke once again to go flag to flag to take victory here. That's a perfect score for him so far. Button in 2nd and Munro 3rd. And we'll just wait to see if any of the drivers drop into the interview room. We have got Steve Hinden in there waiting, so we could drag him in. But fantastic stuff so far from this championship, David. And we saw battling all the way through the grid. Any kind of standout performances from you? Were there any drivers that you really thought put a show on it? For me personally, the number 22, David Belanger in 8th, that was a really fantastic drive for him considering the difficulties last time out. Nice to see someone bounce back, but some impressive drives up and down the order.
Absolutely. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth, Tim. I was actually going to say the person who I was going to give the affectionately named driver of the day to would have actually been David, because he just did a fantastic race. It was very much an under the radar job, but sometimes that's the kind of thing you need. And he did a fantastic job. And as much as I don't want to tarnish anyone with a brush like this, most improved from last week, I would certainly say he was.
Definitely, as we're seeing some of the highlights on screen at the moment, as a couple of drivers drop down to maybe have a word with us in a second. But David, your thoughts on the race as a whole, and obviously moving forward to Kyalami, another different race track to take to, and as more different characteristics for these drivers to consider. What have we learned from this week, do you think, that we can carry forwards? I know it's much of the same. The drivers are going to be close, the batting's going to be tight, and it's not over till the fat lady sings. But anything from this race that kind of stands out to you as a lesson learned heading forwards to the halfway point of the season?
Well, I think what we'll hopefully start to see, I mean, this is definitely not necessarily going to be the case, but I would imagine it's going to be a case of people thinking, I don't necessarily need to do as much battling early on in the race as I did, because we saw just how much aggression there was. We know that we're going to Kyalami next week. It's a ruthless track, as most of these ones are, to be completely honest with you. It's not going to be a place that's going to take many prisoners, and it's going to be a case of maybe these guys just need to hunker down for the first 15 minutes, unlike they did this, and like a lot of them did this evening, and just bide their time. You don't have to win it into the first corner. But to be fair to him, and he disappeared up the road with it. But they just need to, maybe just need to calm it down a little bit for the first few minutes. And it's a 60-minute race. There's plenty of racing to be done, and we saw that this evening. And I'm sure those guys will be taking that into account for next week. So I'll let Tim. I'll let Tim disappear down into the interview booth, and it will be live with him in a second. I think we're going to have a chance to chat to Steve, Luca, John, Jensen, and Tim as well, of course. So we'll hand over to him now. We'll get his thoughts from some of the top three and a couple of the guys down the grid.
Thank you very much, David. So I'm joined in the commentary booth by our podium finishers this evening, and indeed Steve Hindon, the brains behind the championship. Well, we'll start with Luca Burke. Luca, congratulations on another victory, but once again it looked like the gap started to come down at the end of the race, and we saw your gap as well. It was over 6.5 seconds to Jensen behind, but he manages to close up for the checkered flag. Anything happen out on track that we didn't catch on camera?
He did start catching, didn't he, cheeky bugger? No, it's just I got into a nice rhythm, just kept it easy, of course, no point risking it. But yeah, as the gap started to come down, he did make me pick up the pace a bit, not gonna lie. And yeah, towards the end I had let's say not the cleanest interactions with back markers. I mean, there's no incidents, but just got held up a bit. But yeah, fortunately the gap was big enough to stay ahead, otherwise I wouldn't hear the end of it.
Well, last time out at Imola you had a similar race, really leading from the front. And again, this evening, you were out there seemingly untouchable for the majority of the race. But that poses a different challenge, doesn't it? You really have to get your head down and focus on getting your lap times complete. But we have seen this evening, with a very close qualifying, that the gap to you has been brought down. And heading into the next race at Kyalami, you expecting the challenge to be even greater from those around you?
Oh, definitely. Like, I'm excited for every race coming up. Like, I really want to see how close it can get, because like it feels like every race just gets closer and closer, doesn't it? So yeah, just a really exciting series.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Luca. A perfect score so far. Congratulations on your result this evening. We'll head over to Jensen. Jensen, you had plenty of pace in the bag this evening, but it wasn't enough to get the better of Berg.
It wasn't, and it was all down to the start, really. You know, when Luca gets the lead and he's got space, it's always very difficult to catch him or to be as quick as him. So it was tricky. Had a good start, but I got forced out at turn 2 and I went down to 5th place. So had to fight my way back a little bit. So was a lot of fun. But Luca's a tricky one in these cars. He's a bit of an expert of the Cayman. I don't know why, but he's just got that little bit extra always in hand.
Well, fingers crossed you can close that close that gap to him next time. But qualifying was very close. Did you enjoy gaps of less than a tenth, less than half a tenth at points? What was it like leaving all out there on the track this evening?
It's a tricky one. I mean, we'll all say that we had more in quali, and I think a lot of us made mistakes in the last corner. But it was what it was, and I think it's awesome to be that close. So many cars at the front. Yeah, great race. Great to see Luca doing well. He's on top of it at the moment. So good to get reasonably close to him. Hopefully in the next race we'll give him a little nudge, give it a little bit more of a nudge, and and we'll be fighting at the front with him.
Well, one driver we saw you very close to was your teammate Alex Buncombe. We did see you swap positions. What was the reasoning behind that? Was Alex struggling, or were you just quicker and it was a little bit of Alex Jensen is faster than you?
No, he actually said to me, he said, JB, he said, you're a little bit quicker than me, so take over and see what you can do, see if you can catch Luca. So he did, which is lovely, and then he made a mistake and ran wide, which is a shame behind, but and lost out to John. But yeah, it was really cool. Obviously, we're racing as teammates, so we're trying to help each other as much as we can. I think we all need as much help as we can to catch Luca.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Jensen, and congratulations on a podium, first time out in the Esport Design Cayman Cup.
Cheers.
And moving over to our third place finisher, John Munro. An exciting battle for you, John, although it did seem at times that you were just having to bide your time and hope for fireworks up front. But after not racing last time out, you must be very pleased with your performance this evening.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy, to be honest. I think the whole team did a really good job. I think to get the 5 kind of Rocket and Sancho cars in the top 5 places was brilliant. Myself and Ross, unfortunately, were looking like we weren't going to be able to make it tonight, but about an hour before the race, our plans changed, so we were just jumping on to practice and get up to speed. So we weren't really expecting much. I think we were both hoping just to get into the top 10, but in the end, our pace was pretty good. I think we just got enough practice in and managed to keep it up there. In terms of the race, there wasn't too much happening. I think the battle at the start, as JB said, was a little bit fraught, and I managed to kind of pick my way through that and bide my time a wee bit. And then it was just a case of basically follow the leader, and it was just a hot lapping competition from then on. I think I don't think I put much of a foot wrong. Maybe a couple of little mistakes here and there, but generally I drove a pretty good race. So the guys in front did an amazing job too. And Al, if he hadn't made that one mistake, probably would have stayed ahead as well. So I think it was just a good race had by all. Just a shame it wasn't maybe so exciting at the front for you guys in the broadcast.
No, it was. I can tell you, it was a very exciting race to be in the comms box for. But John, just give us a little bit of insight. We've seen a handful of these ACC tracks, and particularly when you're fighting so close together in GT4s, that tyre wear and tyre pressures can become an issue. How does the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit rank amongst those other tracks, and particularly with Kyalami, Snetterton and Donington still yet to host races? How do these individual tracks affect the tyres, and how can you be left fighting pressures at somewhere like the Nurburgring?
Oh, it hugely impacts it. And I think, to be honest, this has probably been the best experience I've had in GT4s for tyres. And it's funny because it's probably the least prep I've had as well. It's the first race I've done in the Porsche. And the tyres, I actually had a qualifying setup on. I just stuck some fuel in it and hoped for the best. No testing on it. And to be honest, the tyres lasted really well. I think by the end of the race, I was only a couple of tenths off my outright pace. So, the pressures for me stayed in the range. But the thing is, it's so easy for them to drop out. If you're just 0.1 or 0.2 PSI out, you can find yourself getting punctures very quickly. I think there was a race at Snetterton I did a month or so ago in the Mercedes where I had, I think, 14 or 15 notifications to say my tyres were losing pressure. So it's hugely important in the GT4s, and it seems to be a lot more inconsistent than with the GT3s. So there really is a sweet spot you need to hit between about 26.5 and 27 PSI when they're running hot. And thankfully today I managed to get it in the window. The Porsche seems pretty good, but I know a lot of the guys around me, like Al, was really struggling with one of his tyres going down. So hopefully it's more of the car than the track that actually helped me out this time. But I have to say the Nurburgring wasn't bad at all.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, John, and congratulations on your third place position this evening.
Thanks, guys. And
we'll head over to our last interview with Steve Hindon, the mastermind behind our series that you've all enjoyed this evening. Steve, I won't mention drive-through penalties because I know I'll get a slap on the wrist for that one. But this evening, a different issue befell your way. But I suppose you got to enjoy the coverage. What did you think of the race that took place this evening?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. It started off really well. It was very close at the start. A lot of cars at the Nurburgring. It's a typical thing. I sort of mentioned in the chat beforehand about, can we have a clean turn one? Is notorious for incidents. It was very close at the start. I didn't qualify quite as good as I wanted to, but then again, looking at the field that I'm racing in, I was quite happy with it. I was sort of battling for 12th, and yeah, got disconnected. No drive-through this week, thankfully, though, so that's a good thing.
Well, a nice strong running up until then. So what's the target for the next time out at Kyalami? Is it getting into the points and just bagging a couple of tallies against your name, or do you really want to be up there challenging the likes of Burke and Button?
Well, I was hoping to at least get into the points today, and I think I had the pace. I was racing with, I think it was Rommel Jensen and Oscar Sandberg.
Yeah.
Not that I'm sort of being funny to them, but they were holding me up a little bit. I was sort of desperate to get past them and sort of get a move on. Unfortunately, I got disconnected before then. I was hoping to get into the points, and I think I had the pace to get into the 10 to get some points. And yeah, I think that's for the next race. That's kind of going to be my aim, is to try and at least get into some points. I didn't have a best of starts at Imola with the drive-through, and then unluckily I got a disconnection this week, but that's racing.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for dropping down into the interview booth, Steve, and obviously a disappointing end to your race this evening, but I look forward to seeing you out there next time and hopefully inside that top 10.
Yeah, cheers, Tim. And just I'll quickly say thank you to yourselves and Steve for the broadcasting, and thank you to everybody for taking part in it. You know, it's a great series already, and I couldn't do it without anybody driving or anybody sort of doing the broadcasting and commentating. So really brilliant. Thank you to everyone that's involved in it.
Thanks, Steve. Pleasure's ours.
Oh, there you have it, folks. Lovely touch from Steve at the end there. Big thank you to him, and fantastic work from everyone, and brilliant work from you there, Tim. Lovely interviews and some interesting points coming out of that. I know. Obviously, the tyre thing is something that always is hotly debated in the GT4 class on ACC, and by the sounds of it, next week's just going to be a case of let's go catch Luca Burke. By the sounds of it,
yeah, definitely. And I'd like to no disservice to David Belanger in the EGT Challenge car. I think I'm going to change my personal vote for driver of the day. John Munro admitting that he only got on his sim an hour before the race took part. He wasn't expecting to be racing, and then to come up with a podium. I mean, that's a fantastic effort from him. So really excited to see what he can do going forward. We know the pace he has, and especially this evening, if the Zansho SimSport driver can turn up and get a podium with only an hour's practice, I'm sure he's got plenty more where that came from. But moving forward to Kyalami, more of the same. And like you say, David, it's going to be about who can pick up the pieces and pick up the slack and try and close up on Luca Burke. But a fantastic race again this evening. Thank you very much for joining me in the commentary box once again. I look forward to the next race at Kyalami. Thank you as well to Steve Proudley, our broadcast director from SimSport Solutions. A fantastic job on bringing us the pictures this evening. Thank you as well to those in the YouTube chat who looked to definitely had an eye on that, and it looks like everyone was enjoying the action this evening. But join us next time here on the Esport Designs YouTube channel for the Esports Designs Invitational Porsche Cayman Cup Round 3 at Kyalami. I've been Tim Fulbrook. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.